Well, hello again. It's Kevin here from BustingSticks.com, and this is honestly the third time trying to make this video. Today we're going to try and look at the settings that make the drum set, the Alesis Nitro Mesh, play a little bit more musically. We're talking about the settings for sensitivity, crosstalk, threshold, and such. So we're going to jump right into it. I know it's been a while since actual videos come out, and honestly this has kind of been a pain in the butt to do. This is the third attempt. Let's hope that this is the last and final edition of it. Alright, let's take a look at the drums, look at the settings, and get into it. Okay, so here we have a few shots. I've set the cameras up. It's kind of hard to do, honestly. I've taken one of the drums and pushed it a little bit out of the way so you can see the module. And I have an overhead shot, and we'll be cutting back and forth to the computer as well so we can see what's going on. So there are really four settings that are under the utility menu that really kind of control how you can play and set up the drum to be as musical as you need it to be. And that's the sensitivity for each of the pads, the threshold, crosstalk, and then the curve. When we talk about the sensitivity, there's also a separate area for the rim sensitivity. So if you've done like I've done and split some of these drums, so you can see this particular drum, Tom 1, is actually the rim of Tom 1, as opposed to this is just Tom 1. And then down here, I have the rim of Tom 4. You'll have to set your sensitivity for that particular pad. So that was a source of frustration earlier on when I did all this splitting and then setting up all the pads, was that I was trying to modify the sensitivity of those drums that are from the rim, and I would change the values and nothing would happen. So we'll take a look at that in a moment. All right, so sensitivity. First thing in sensitivity. Sensitivity is literally how sensitive the pad is to your stroke when you play the drum. All right, you can see here the higher setting is higher sensitivity, even would produce a loud volume when struck softly. Now, you crank that sensitivity number up, and playing like this is not going to give you a range. So let's jump into utility here. When you play the drum, it sets which one is set. You see here, my snare drum is 9, this is 13. So let's take this all the way down to 1. You see at 1, I'm getting to the limit of what I'm comfortable with hitting this drum head, and I cannot get the maximum volume at all. Because the sensitivity is so low that you'll never approach the maximum Midi value when it comes out. Now this is great if you want it to be just whisper, you're playing with just the lightest touch and it never gets very loud, but it's not very musical, at least in a general sense. Then we'll go all the way up to 16. Now 16, I'm at maximum volume and I'm barely hitting the drum. So it's really hard now to play softly. It just goes right to maximum volume almost instantly. So I have found somewhere in that 9 to 13 range is optimal. Now on the snare, I'm a little bit lower because I want to be able to have a little bit more range to my snare drum. It's just a personal preference. It's much more like a real snare drum in that case. But that's the sensitivity for those. Now, I did talk about the rim sensitivity. You see on this drum here, you have that sensitivity there. If I hit utility and I come around, it's funny how it works. It's almost like the brain has two settings for it. And again, you go all the way down to the bottom. But you saw me with the regular sensitivity, so I'm not really quite sure, honestly, what's happening there, but that's just how it's working. That's flash sensitivity. That has to do with the hi-hat, but I'm not going to get into that because, honestly, I've never really had a lot of luck with that. So you can see all my drums 13. We're going to take a look at this bottom one. Let's talk about this particular head for an example. So here's an important part, is using your ears. When you're playing your drums and you're setting these settings up, what I was finding is when I got down to this bottom one, I was hitting maximum volume almost instantly. And I had the settings set pretty much like all the other ones. So in Superior Drummer, there is a place where the note velocities get shown to you. I'm going to see if I can zoom in on that. There it is, right? You can see that maximum velocity for MIDI value is 127. That's my second tom. This is my bottom tom. So what I was finding when I first set up the kit was it was up. I could not. I'd get to 127, the maximum volume, almost instantly, and I'd be like, wait, why can I do this? But over here, you can hear it's gone right to max, and I'm barely hitting the drum. And so I don't know if there's something going on with just the manufacturing process of this pad. There's something weird with where the trigger got placed, something in the cable, something at the brain. I'm not sure which, but this is where it becomes important that you use your ears. What's helpful is you're able to back it up with the MIDI data, if you can see it. Now, this is Superior Drummer. If you're using Easy Drummer, if you're using Main Stage, any of the ones that take a MIDI input, there is a view someplace where you can see the MIDI note values as they come in real time. It's really helpful to be able to look at those and kind of back up what your ears are saying to you, which is, that doesn't feel right. That's a little bit better. It's still not great, but again, this one's always been a little bit of a troublemaker, honestly, and so that's the sensitivity setting. So now, let's move on. Let's move on now to the threshold. Now, threshold is, again, it's another one of these things. They all work together when you're playing these. And threshold is the allows a signal to be received. So it's kind of like a noise gate in audio terms. So let's hit utility, and there's our threshold. All right, so you can see in my snare drum, I have it down to the bottom level, the level 1. And the idea behind that is I want it to trigger almost every touch I make on this pad. I want it to be like a real snare drum. I want it to be super sensitive. If I bring this threshold up, it's kind of like a noise gate. You have to hit the floor. And you can see now I have the threshold pushed almost, oh, there's max. I have no way of getting to the softer values, the lower note values. So it's very much like a noise gate would be in an audio situation where you want it to cut off below a certain value. So on the snare, I like to have it at 1, as sensitive as possible. And my two upper toms, I've just set to 5. Because I just felt there. Now, some of that may be, it's a cool feature of Superior Drummer. Can you hear the snare leaking through? Like a real kit. Just pull that out. Maybe it's because I tighten my heads like real drums, so my upper toms have a tighter mesh tension than my lower drums, where I have down at the 6. That's just me. And then same with the cymbals. Threshold I have down pretty low so I can be a little bit more musical with the ride and the hi-hat. And bass drum I have set at 10. Don't ignore your bass drum, but I found because it's isolated by itself, it kind of is a little less important. It's more of a personal preference. So if you're finding you're getting a lot of double triggers from your bass drum because you tend to bounce your head, you bounce the beater on the head inadvertently, you might want to play with the threshold setting and the sensitivity setting to cut those out until it only triggers when you really want it to. All right, crosstalk. Crosstalk is the setting that tries to prevent when you hit this pad from anything adjacent from playing. Now, I'll be honest, I've never had a problem with crosstalk on this kit in any way, shape, or form. And if you watch some of my videos, you can tell that I really hit the crap out of these things. I play them like acoustic drums. So you can play around with this setting. I'll show you on mine. I think I have 6. Some reason the hi-hat's at 4, maybe that's just how it came, and the bass drum I have, again, down at 1 because it hasn't been an issue at all. It's really hard to demonstrate this because I've not been able to get it to do it. I have heard some comments online, some people having problems with triggering other sounds when they hit an adjacent pad. This is where you go to set that setting and make that change. Okay, the last setting is the curve. The curve is how your triggers respond to dynamics. And it lets you do some interesting things. And you can see they try to give you a diagram to kind of show you a representation of what happens. So I pretty much have all my pieces set to curve number 1, which is a linear progression. So as I play harder, the MIDI value and volume from the pad goes up in a direct relationship. And that's how a real drum works, right? The harder you hit the drum, the louder it goes. There's no sudden loudness value or anything else. It goes in a smooth, straight line, the more force you put into the drum. But it allows you to make some settings to accommodate perhaps different styles of play or how you like to play. So I have the curve set. Actually, I'm going to use this drum down here because a second ago I went to go do that and I hit the microphone cable and knocked it right out of the phone, sent it flying across the room. So let's try this one. So you can see I go up the curve. So let's go look at 2. So you can see it made a big jump. It's kind of a sudden curve that happens at that bend. Let's try this one, number 3. Takes a little bit longer to get there, but then it goes straight up. This 4 looks interesting. Again, it gets there much faster with the striking force going to the right and the loudness going up and down. Let's try this one here. Yeah, that kind of goes right away, and then 6. So, for me, because I'm coming from acoustic drums, I want to set that down as a 1 because I want it to be just like an acoustic drum kit. I want it to go in a straight line. The more force I put into the pad, the louder it gets with no sudden switches or changes or artificial curves to it. Again, to each their own. Maybe it's something different for you, but this is what I do for these sort of things. Alright, so there you have it. There are the settings that you can use in the Alesis Nitro Mesh to try and make it be a little bit more of a musical instrument. Again, coming from an acoustic drum background, percussion background, I want this kit to respond as close to as a real drum set as I can. Now, again, this kit is a value option, let's say, and perhaps doesn't have all the niceties and the smoothness that maybe $3,000, $5,000, $7,000 e-kit has, but we didn't spend nearly that much and still have as much fun with this as we can. When you work on these settings, again, use your ears. That should be your first indicator that something isn't quite right. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't sound right, then perhaps open up a Midi monitor on one of your programs that you use to verify what you're looking at, and then take a look at one of those 4 settings. The only one that's a little confusing is that rim sensitivity versus the regular sensitivity if you split the pads, and even I still to this day don't quite understand why it responds differently to those 2 settings on a split pad, but it is how it is. If you're looking for this manual, I have it on my website, bustingsticks.com. You also find Amazon links there for all the things I use here. Thank you so much for those of you who have bought things through Amazon through those links. It's helped me pay, honestly, for the site fees for the Squarespace host. And again, I can't believe that we're over 1,000 subscribers. I thank each and every one of you. Can't even speak. I mean, it's noontime as opposed to midnight when I usually make these videos. You'd think I'd be a little bit more coherent, but clearly not. Thank you, everybody who's watched. If you've been watching and you haven't been subscribing, consider, please. That would be great. I'm going to be making a few different types of videos. I've had some lovely comments about my playing, and I appreciate all of them. It's been 40 plus years of practicing. Again, I went to school for music way back in the day, but I've never taken drum set lessons, so I'm not going to purport to be able to give you a drum set lesson, but I can give you some techniques and warm-ups and other things that you could use that will apply to playing drum set. So I'm going to try and make a couple of those videos. If there's something you'd like to see, I'd love to hear it in the comments. If there's something on the Alesis Nitro Mesh that you'd love to have answered, again, I'd love to see it in the comments. I answer basically every single comment that's out there eventually, so I really appreciate the engagement. So till next time, visit bustingsticks.com, subscribe, like, all those things, and until next time, I'll see you real soon. Bye.